Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. We are on Shaykh Uthaymeen's Tafsīr of Sūrat al-Baqarah in the English language, and now we are on part 36. Please be aware that we have the PowerPoint presentations available for you to download in the video description in PDF format as usual. Now we are looking at verse 166. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, اتَّبَرَّأَ الَّذِينَ اتُّبِعُوا مِنَ الَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوا وَرَأَوُا الْعَذَابَ وَتَقَطَّعَتْ بِهِمُ الْأَسْبَابُ. So we continue with this verse from before in the previous class. And they should consider that when those who have been followed disassociate themselves from those who followed them, and they all see the punishment and cut off from them are all the ties of relationship. Those who are upon falsehood and were followed as such will not be of any benefit to their followers on that day. Had that not been the case, then those who were followed would not have disassociated themselves from their followers. The matter does not stop short of the followers not getting benefit. Rather, it goes as far as disassociation on the part of those who were followed from their followers. And that is the greatest of regret for the ones who followed them. They will all see the punishment, and this is an affirmation of it in the verse, as it says, وَرَأَوْا الْعَذَابِ. And what branches off from that is affirmation of the resurrection. And of course, today's social media environment with followers and this one and that one, we should really think deeply about this verse. Allah gathers between the followers and the ones who were followed as a source of mockery and regret. Imagine someone you followed and looked up to as disassociating himself from you. They will disassociate themselves from each other, and the verse shows that any and all false means and ties will be severed on that day of standing. And this applies, of course, to those who were followed based on falsehood as opposed to those who were followed in truth. The prophets will not be the ones that disassociate themselves from their followers, because the prophets were followed bil-haqq. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows the exception in Sūrat al-Zukhruf as well. الْأَخِلَّاءُ يَوْمَئِذٍ بَعْضُهُمْ لِبَعْضٍ عَدُوٌّ إِلَّا الْمُتَّقِينَ. Close friends that day will be enemies to each other, except for the righteous. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then said in 167, وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوا لَوْ أَنَّ لَنَّا كَرَّةً فَنَتَبَرَّأَ مِنْهُمْ كَمَا تَبَرَّأُوا مِنَّا كَذَلِكَ يُرِيهِمُ اللَّهُ أَعْمَالَهُمْ حَسْرَةً عَلَيْهِمْ وَمَا هُمْ بِخَارِجِينَ مِنَ النَّارِ. Those who followed will say, if only we had another turn at worldly life so we could disassociate ourselves from them as they have disassociated themselves from us. Thus will Allah show them their deeds as regrets upon them, and they are never to emerge from the fire. The followers would wish that they can come back to the dunya in order to disassociate themselves from those whom they followed, as a sort of payback due to the followers, disassociating themselves from the followers on the day of Qiyamah, of standing. And of course that is impossible, and this will only add more regret to them. The regret they will all feel on missing out on doing what is good in this dunya is unimaginable, unlike no other, because they cannot make up for it. A regret in this world may be rectified with forgiveness, but not in the hereafter. The verse shows Allah's punishment on them in that He knows them, He shows them their deeds as regrets upon them, and that they will be in the hellfire forever. They will not exit from it. The verse affirms that the hellfire is true. In fact, it is present now. Someone brought up that some texts show that the hellfire is in the depths of the earth. The Shaykh rahimahullah answered that we have not been able to dig up the earth, and that the hellfire is in a lower direction, but perhaps not in the earth itself, and Allahu a'lam, Allah knows best. Getting some benefits from verse 168, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ كُلُوا مِمَّا فِي الْأَرْضِ حَلَالًا طَيِّبًا وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ مُّبِينٌ. All mankind eat from whatever is on earth that is lawful and good, and do not follow the footsteps of Satan. Indeed, he is to you a clear enemy. The verse shows Allah's favor on His slaves in that He permitted all of what is on the earth. The verse shows that the original state of all of what is on the earth is that it is permissible, al-hil, and good, طيب, unless there is proof to show its prohibition. الأصل فيما في الأرض الحل والطيب حتى يتبين أنه حرام. One can take from this verse that the disbelievers are addressed with subsidiary matters other than belief, الأمور يعني الشرعية, because the verse begins with يا أيها الناس, O mankind. So الكفار مخاطبون بفروع الشريعة. الآية تبدأ بيا أيها الناس، وهم داخلون في هذا الخطاب فيكونون مخاطبين بفروع الشريعة، وهذا هو الصحيح. The Shaykh said they are included in the address of all mankind, so they are addressed with the branches of the Sharia, and that is what is correct, because the scholars had different statements about that. However, the address does not mean that they are obliged to obey the commands while they are disbelievers, because the first thing to which we call them is to become Muslim. After that, they are required to follow the Islamic legislation. And the first evidence for this is Allah's statement, وَمَا مَنَعَهُمْ أَن تُقْبَلَ مِنْهُمْ نَفَقَاتُهُمْ إِلَّا أَنَّهُمْ كَفَرُوا بِاللَّهِ. And what prevents them, what prevents their expenditures from being accepted, nafaqa, meaning the donations and so forth, charity, from them, but that they have disbelieved in Allah. This is in Sūrat al-Tawbah. So how can we obligate them with what does not benefit them? It would be useless and a sort of oppression. So they're not required to do these things. And the second is Allah's statement, قُلْ لِلَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا إِن يَنْتَهُوا يُغْفَرْ لَهُم مَا قَدْ سَلَفَ. Say to those who have disbelieved that if they cease, what has previously occurred will be forgiven for them. And due to this, the Messenger ﷺ did not obligate for those who believed after disbelief to go back and make up the previous zakah or make up fasting in Ramadan and miss prayers. So then what is the benefit in the disbelievers being addressed with the branches of the Sharia, like in this verse about them, for example, كُلُوا مِمَّا فِي الْأَرْضِ حَلَالًا طَيِّبًا and so forth? The scholar said that this is in order to increase their punishment in the hereafter, يعني زِيَادَةُ عُقُوبَتِهِمْ فِي الْآخِرَةِ. Example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Qur'an in Sūrat al-Muddathir, إِلَّا أَصْحَابَ الْيَمِينِ فِي جَنَّاتٍ يَتَسَاءَلُونَ عَنِ الْمُجْرِمِينَ مَا سَلَكَكُمْ فِي سَقَرَ قَالُوا لَمْ نَكُن مِنَ الْمُصَلِّينَ وَلَمْ نَكُن نُطْعِمُ الْمِسْكِينَ وَكُنَّا نَخُوضُ مَعَ الْخَائِضِينَ وَكُنَّا نُكَذِّبُ بِيَوْمِ الدِّينِ حَتَّى أَتَانَا الْيَقِينُ. Except the companions of the right, who will be in gardens questioning each other about the criminals and asking them, what put you into Saqar, another name for Jahannam and hellfire. They will say, and this is the point here, we were not of those who prayed, nor did we used to feed the poor, and we used to enter into vain discourse with those who engaged in it, and we used to deny the day of recompense until there came to us the certainty, which is al-maut, death. So these verses can be taken as evidence that the disbelievers are addressed with the branches of the Sharia, just as they are addressed with the foundations of the Sharia. But in the latter case, meaning the foundations, it is by consensus of the scholars, because they are all required to believe. In the verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ, and do not follow the footsteps of shaitan, that it is haram to do so, it is prohibited to do so. This includes eating and drinking with the left hand, as the Shaykh mentioned in the previous class. The Messenger ﷺ said, لا يأكلن أحدكم بشماله ولا يشربن بها فإن الشيطان يأكل بشماله ويشرب بها. None of you must ever eat or drink with his left hand, for the devil eats and drinks with his left hand. This includes any acts of disobedience. Disobeying Allah and being arrogant to follow His commandments is from the footsteps of shaitan. فإن معصية الله والاستكبار عن أمره من خطوات الشيطان. Another one is القياس الفاسد, corrupt analogy or قياس. من اتباع خطوات الشيطان القياس الفاسد. The first one who did this is Iblis himself. يقولون يعني العلماء أول من قاس قياسا فاسدا إبليس. When Allah commanded him to prostrate to Adam, Iblis went against this command with a false analogy. He said, قال أنا خير منه خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين. He said, I'm better than him. You created me from fire and created him from clay. And as if to say that it was Adam who was supposed to prostrate to Iblis, like the other way around. That's what he said. فهذا قياس في مقابلة النص فاسد الاعتبار. So this is a qiyas in opposition to the divine text, and as such it is a false consideration, and it is not to be given any regard. You're not allowed to have any analogy or qiyas when there is a clear text about something. And from the following of the footsteps of shaitan is al-hasad, envy. Iblis said that what he said out of envy from Adam. It is also an attribute of the Jews. وَدَّ كَثِيرٌ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ لَا يُرُدُّونَكُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ إِيمَانِكُمْ كُفَّارًا حَسَدًا مِنْ عِنْدِ أَنفُسِهِمْ. Many of the people of the scripture wish they could turn you back to disbelief after you have believed out of envy from themselves. This is a verse that we covered in earlier classes. Any bad character or evil action is from the footsteps of the shaitan. The verse also affirms the animosity of the shaitan to the progeny of Adam, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌ مُبِينٌ, and it is emphasized by innahu before the attached pronoun, the ha. Indeed, he is to you a clear enemy. And the balagha, or the eloquence of the Qur'an, is clearly shown here. That is shown بِقَرْنِ الْحُكْمِ بِعِلَّتِهِ, by having the ruling alongside its cause or defining factor, al-'illah. There are benefits in that, such as الطمأنينة والحث والترغيب أو الترهيب, giving tranquility, urging, attracting, or frightening. So not to follow the shaitan due to him being a clear enemy. This is basically the illah, because don't follow him. Why? Because he's a clear enemy. فقرن الحكم بعلته له ثلاث فوائد. Coupling a ruling with its defining factor has three benefits. Number one, اطمئنان المخاطب. First, the one addressed will feel will feel at ease. Second, كمال الشريعة الإسلامية, the comprehensiveness of the Islamic Sharia. Third, القياس على هذه عموم الحكم بعموم العلة. Qiyas derived from it, from whatever is in the texts, the generality of the ruling due to the generality of the defining factor. An example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in verse 145 of Sūrat al-An'am, قُلْ لَا أَجْدُ فِيمَا أُوحِيَ إِلَيَّ مُحَرَّمًا عَلَى طَاعِمٍ يَطْعَمُهُ إِلَّا أَنْ يَكُونَ مَيْتَةً أَوْ دَمًا مَسْفُوحًا أَوْ لَحْمَ خِنْزِيرٍ فَإِنَّهُ رِجْسٌ. Say, I do not find within that which was revealed to me, anything forbidden to one who would eat, unless it be a dead animal, or blood spilled out, or the flesh of swine. And then what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? For indeed it is rijs, it is impure. So anything that is impure, فَإِنَّهُ rijs, for indeed it is impure, this is a description, it's an identification. So anything that meets the criteria of being impure would be in the same category as blood poured forth, and the flesh of swine, and dead animals as well. First, the one being addressed will feel at ease on the prohibition of such a thing, and that it is prohibited due to its impurity and evilness. طمأنينة المخاطب إلى تحريم هذا الشيء وأنه حرم لنجاسته وخبثه. Second, وخبثه. ظهور سمو الشريعة وحكمها وأسرار وحكمها أو وحكمتها وأسرارها وأنها ما تثبت حكما إلا لعلة. The manifestation of the eminence of the Sharia and its wisdom and secrets, and that it does affirm a ruling, except it does not affirm a ruling except due to a clear defining factor or cause or reason. Third thing is عموم الحكم بعموم العلة يعني القياس فكل ما كان نجسا وإن لم يكن من هؤلاء الثلاثة فهو محرم. The generality of the ruling due to the generality of the cause, meaning qiyas, to make an analogy on something, to literally measure it according to something else. So whatever is impure, even if it is not from among the three mentioned things in the verse, would be prohibited. The verse also shows the extreme warning from the footsteps of shaitan. No rational person would follow someone whom he believes in his animosity. All acts of disobedience are from the footsteps of shaitan. Now the next verse we're going to go to is the beginning of the new lesson. إِنَّمَا يَأْمُرُكُم بِالسُّوءِ وَالْفَحْشَاءِ وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. He only orders you to evil and immorality, and to say about Allah what you do not know. This is to clarify the previous verse further. Yani the word إنما in the beginning is adatu hasr, used for restriction. It is to affirm the ruling on what is mentioned and to negate from it all else. Al-hasru إثبات الحكم في المذكور ونفيه عما سواه. If one says, for example, إنما القائم زيد, أثبت القيام لزيد ونفيه عمن سواه. If someone says only Zayd is the one that got up, in this case you affirm the rising for Zayd and negated from all of those other than him. Negated it from all of those other than him. So in this verse it means that Satan only orders those things, and the address is for all people, because these verses are in the context of addressing everyone, from the previous verse 168 as we mentioned in the beginning of it, Ya ayyuhan nas, O mankind. And as-su refers to the minor sins. The word as-su here means the minor sins, but al-fahsha is in reference to major sins such as zina, marrying women that one's father already married, stinginess from fulfilling the obligation of zakah, and so on. Yani ash-shaytanu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the shaitan, regarding this part about zakah and charity, ash-shaytanu ya'idukum al-faqra wa ya'murukum bil-fahsha. For example, see, Satan threatens you with poverty and orders you to immorality. So it's been put as alongside him promising you poverty, and immorality is obviously you not paying what you're supposed to pay. Satan orders both minor and major sins. Even though minor sins are expiated with good deeds, yet he still orders them, because if one does them repeatedly, the minor sins, they cause one's heart to harden, and for one to become defiantly disobedient, to become a fasiq. Plus, even the daily prayers, not all of them erase one's sins. They might just be in order to fulfill the obligation. يعني بعض الصلوات عسى أن تبرئ الذمة فقط. The prayer that expiates sin is the one done according to one's best ability. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the verse, وَأَن تَقُولُوا, and to say. This is in addition to the first part, بِالسُّوءِ, meaning وَبِقَوْلِكُمْ, according to what you say. تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ means تَنْسِبُوا إِلَيْهِ الْقَوْلِ, to attribute to him a speech, that he said something, or that you say something about him. The relative pronoun, which is a type of noun, ma in the verse, right, is the maf'ul of taqulu, in the verse. And what the word what here, which is ma, is the word affected by to say in the Arabic language. إِنَّمَا يَأْمُرُكُم بِالسُّوءِ وَالْفَحْشَاءِ وَأَن تَقُولُوا. So this encompasses all of what is said about or against Allah, be it his attributes, actions, names, legislation, even himself, his essence. So whoever affirms for Allah a name without knowing that it is a name of Allah, then he has spoken about Allah what he does not know, meaning the person. The same applies for one who affirms an attribute for Allah which he does not know that Allah has described himself with. Then again, such a person said about Allah that which he does not know. And one who attributes to Allah an action which Allah did not do, then he has spoken about Allah without knowledge. And if someone attributes to Allah a legislation, a hukum, which Allah did not legislate, then such a person has said about Allah that which he does not know. Some would say that such and such is halal and such is haram, and Allah did not legislate that at all. Then he has said about Allah what he does not know. فهو شامل للأسماء والصفات والأفعال والأحكام وأقول الذات أيضا. كل من قال على الله ما لا يعلم فإنه داخل في هذه الآية وفعله من أوامر الشيطان. Anyone who says about Allah which he does not know, then he is included in this verse, and his actions are from the commands of the shaitan. وعطف أن تقولوا على الله ما لا تعلمون على السوء والفحشاء من باب عطف الخاص على العام فإنه داخل إما في السوء أو الفحشاء وهو أيضا الفحشاء أقرب. Adding, meaning what comes in the verse after the first part, and to say about Allah what you do not know, to what came before it, which is of evil and morality, right, is from the aspect of adding the specific, which comes after, to the general that came before it. And in this case, saying about Allah what one does not know is closer to al-fahsha, which is the major sins, as opposed to as-su, which refers to minor sins. Speaking about Allah is of three types. The first is when one says about Allah what he knows that Allah has in fact said. This is either obligatory or permissible. Sometimes it might become obligatory to say the truth about Allah if there's a need for it. That's the first category. Second one is that he says about Allah something which he knows is the opposite of what Allah said, completely contradicting it. And this is the most grave and is definitely prohibited. The third is that someone says that what he doesn't know that Allah said. This is also prohibited. It's like him guessing or not being sure of himself. So it is prohibited if someone says about Allah what he doesn't know, or that he knows that Allah has said the complete opposite of it. أن يقول ما لا يعلم أو أن يقول ما يعلم أن الله قال بخلافه. One does not hear the shaitan because the shaitan whispers. So when someone speaks about Allah without knowledge or commits another sin, then he knows that it was the shaitan who commanded it. وأن تقولوا على الله ما لا تعلمون. And to say about Allah what you do not know. This encompasses speaking about Allah regarding His essence, His that. Like those who say that Allah is not inside the world or outside of it, He is not connected to it, nor disconnected, or He is not above the world nor below it. Such people have spoken about Allah without knowledge. Rather, they speak to the contrary of what is known in the texts. It also includes speaking about Allah's names and attributes. This is like one who says that the names of Allah do not prove His attributes. So they say, for example, He is Sami', that's His name, but without hearing, without the attribute of hearing. Basir, without sight. Alim, but without knowledge. They say, فَهُوَ عَلِيمٌ بِذَاتِهِ لَا بِعِلْمِهِ وَوَصْفِهِ, that He is knowledgeable in His essence, but not with His knowledge or attribute. Those who say this are the Mu'tazila and the Jahmiyyah. They do not affirm an attribute, they affirm names which do not prove their meanings. This also includes those who affirm some attributes but not others, such as those are the Ash'ara. Such are the Ash'ara. They say that Allah intended this but did not intend that. He intended this meaning but not that meaning. So they fell into two errors regarding speaking about Allah without knowledge. The first is that they nullify what Allah intended without knowledge. نَفَوْا مَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ بِلَا عِلْمٍ. That's the first thing. Second is that they affirm that which they did not know that Allah intended. أثبتوا ما لم يعلموا أن الله أراده. So they said, for example, استوى بمعنى استولى. استوى العرش يعني استولى عليه. استوى, which means ascended or established above something, means استولى, took possession. So it means that He took possession of the throne. First, they negated the reality of al-istiwa. نفيهم حقيقة الاستواء بلا علم. They did this without knowledge. Second, they affirmed that it means al-istilaء. إثباتهم أن معناها الاستيلاء بلا علم. They did this without knowledge as well. They spoke about Allah without knowledge from two fronts. كذلك القائلون على الله بلا علم بأفعاله مثل أن يثبتوا لله أسبابا لم يجعل الله أسبابا. Also, it is like those who affirm for Allah actions, they do this without knowledge, such as affirming certain means which Allah has not made so. This would be like the astrologers. They have spoken about Allah regarding His actions and creations. So they say that the reason for the existence of a thing is due to a given reason, yet this reason is not proven in the Sharia or in terms of the natural laws that Allah created. An example is the claim that a ring or an amulet is the reason for the husband loving his wife. This is not a means, whether in the Sharia or in the laws of cause and effect that Allah created. There are also those who speak without knowledge regarding Allah's legislation, and there are many of those people, whether it is ordinary people or self-proclaimed scholars who in reality lack knowledge. A Shaykh gave a personal experience about a man who went to an imam of a masjid to write down the divorce for him. So this imam told the man to divorce his wife twice because he does not write down one divorce, because Allah said at-talaqu marratan, divorce is twice in Sūrat al-Baqarah. So the man agreed because he saw that he was an imam of a masjid, so we must know. Yet this is prohibited. It is not allowed for one to divorce his wife twice. This is toying around with Allah's kitab, his religion. The meaning of that verse is actually clear. It means that the divorce in which a man is able to take back his wife is in the first two divorces. Because after that, in verse 230, Allah said if he divorces her, meaning the husband, the third time, then she is no longer permissible for him. This is what the Shaykh called a compounded ignorance, jahl murakkab. This is a person who thinks he's a scholar and he speaks. This is not a jahil basit, someone who is of simple ignorance, because such a person knows he's ignorant and does not speak, he holds back. So those who speak about Allah without knowledge, whether regarding His essence, attributes, actions, names, or legislation, are following the commands of the shaitan. They're following his footsteps. And what drives them to this are things like gaining honor, leadership, the love of prestige, al-jah, and so on. Otherwise, if someone has taqwa, then he would observe proper manners with Allah, and he would not put himself before Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and instead would only say about Allah what he knows that Allah said, whether in His book or in the Sunnah of His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is by His command. And the one who says about Allah something which is the opposite of what Allah said is even worse. Either one says what Allah has said, or he says the opposite of what Allah has said, or he says something which he does not know if Allah said it. It's like guessing. The second did it knowingly and contradicted what Allah said. That the third said it without knowing if Allah said it. Both are prohibited, but the one who said the opposite is the worst one. فإذا قال قائل ألستم تبيحون الفتوى بالظن أو بغلبة الظن فما هو الجواب? Someone asked the Shaykh, what if someone says, don't you permit issuing fatwa based on speculation or speculation that is more likely? The Shaykh said, yes, this is permissible. If one gives a fatwa based on a dhann, then he is saying about Allah which he knows, because Allah has permitted us to base a fatwa on that, and that is proven by His statement, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَسْتَطَعْتُمْ, so fear Allah as much as you are able. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Sūrat al-Baqarah at the very end of it, لَا يُكَلِّفُ اللَّهُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا. Allah does not charge a soul except with that within its capacity. And it is known that likely speculation is better than withholding. وَمَعْلُومَ أَنَّ غَلَبَةَ الظَّنِّ خَيْرٌ مِنَ التَّوَقُّفِ. Many of the matters which the scholars of fiqh speak of and judge, not all or most, but many of them are built upon likely speculation and preponderance or predominance. كثير منها يكون مبنيا على غلبة الظن أو الرجحان. وليس أمرا قطعيا لا في الدلالة ولا في المدلول الذي استدلوا به لا في الدلالة ولا في الدليل. And it is not a definitive matter whether in the actual evidence or in the indication within the evidence itself. And when someone says that something is halal or haram, then he is speaking about Allah. Any fatwa means that someone is speaking about Allah. If someone is asking about a doubtful matter or something unclear, the one who answers is basing it on what he knows about Allah's legislation. And this goes back to what the Shaykh said about the someone going by ghalabat al-dhann, or most likely speculation, because that's why the scholars, they say Allahu a'lam, Allah knows best, out of being polite with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وإذا قيل لهم اتبعوا ما أنزل الله قالوا بل نتبع ألفينا عليه آباءنا أو لو كان آباؤهم لا يعقلون شيئا ولا يهتدون. And when it is said to them, follow that what Allah has revealed, they say, rather we will follow that which we found our fathers doing, even though their fathers understood nothing, nor were they guided. قيل هذه مبنية للمجهول. This word قيل, وإذا قيل, is used for someone who is not defined, someone ambiguous, and the word's origin is قُوِلَ. قُوِلَ. قِيلَ, the original word is قُوِلَ, and the word قَالَ, that we know probably more, then it is قَوَلَ. That's the origin of the word. And قُوِلَ, which is what we're talking about here, is like ضُرِبَ, someone who was given a strike. So قِيلَ, لكن صار فيها إعلال وهي أن الواو مقصورة فقلبت ياء ثم كسر ما قبلها للمناسبة فقيل. It was said قيل instead. This occurs in Arabic morphology in which vowels are changed or modified to each pronunciation. So the letter waw was changed to a ya, and the letter before it pronounced with a kasra. And what is said to them, meaning when the kuffar are told, قيل لهم اتبعوا ما أنزل الله, يعني اتبعوا يعني خذوا به فعلا للمأمور وتركا للمحظور. Follow what Allah has revealed. خذوا به فعلا للمأمور وتركا للمحظور, to apply it by performing what is commanded and abandoning what is prohibited. That's what is meant by taking it. ما أنزل الله, the word ما is a relative pronoun which is for generality. اسم موصول يفيد العموم, so it means ما أنزل الله. يعني ما أنزله الله, what Allah has revealed. In Arabic you add the attached pronoun to the word أنزل to clarify further. as the meaning. Allah has revealed to His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam the book and the hikmah, and many scholars stated that what is meant by the hikmah is the sunnah. If they are told this, they do not accept it, rather they show arrogance. قالوا بل نتبعه. The word bel, which means rather, is للإضراب الإبطالي, to move away from what came before by nullifying it. قالوا بل نتبع ما ألفينا عليه آباءنا. Rather we will follow that which we found our fathers doing. And ما means in Arabic الذي, which. ألفينا means in Arabic وجدنا. Elsewhere Allah says قالوا in Sūrat Luqman بل نتبع ما وجدنا عليه آباءنا. So you find the same verse but with a different word, but the meaning is basically the same thing in Sūrat Luqman. Al-Qur'an يفسر بعضه بعضا. The Shaykh said the Qur'an explains itself. And regarding the fundamentals of tafsir, as he's reminding us, the Shaykh rahimahullah, regarding interpreting the Qur'an, first, it is done with the Qur'an itself. Second, it is done from the Sunnah. Third, from the statements of the Sahaba, the companions. After that, the statements of the senior tabi'un, who are experts in tafsir, such as Mujahid and Qatada and their likes, with a difference of opinion regarding the statements of the tabi'un having priority over the scholars, other scholars who came later. So they said, rather we will follow that which we found our fathers doing. This is from all aspects, whether it is correct or misguidance. They will follow their fathers regardless. They're right or wrong, it doesn't matter. And fathers here means actual fathers and grandfathers or forefathers. آباؤنا المراد بهم آباء الصلب والأجداد أيضا. That is their answer, and it is an answer which is not correct. Rather, it is a false and wrong answer. And that is why Allah nullified it when He said, أَوَلَوْ كَانَ آبَاؤُهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ شَيْئًا وَلَا يَهْتَدُونَ. Even though their fathers understood nothing, nor were they guided. And the first part of that, أَوَلَوْ, the alif is for posing a question. Al-hamzatu lil-istifham. And the letter waw that comes after it is for al-atf, which means and. And it is originally wa'alaw. Wa'alaw. Instead of saying awalaw, it's wa'alaw. But the alif for questioning was brought forward before the letter waw of al-atf, meaning a coordinating conjunction. We say al-atf in Arabic, it's a coordinating conjunction. The other way of the grammarians, when they said أن نقدر فعل مناسب بعد الهمزة وتكون الحرف عطفا على هذا الفعل ويكون الحرف عطفا على هذا الفعل, that we estimate an appropriate verb after the alif of questioning, alif hamzatul istifham, and so the waw means and is added to this verb. It would be estimated to be something like so أولو كان آباؤهم لا يعقلون, right? أيتبعون آباءهم. I put it in green there for you. أيتبعون آباءهم ولو كان آباؤهم لا يعقلون. Do they follow their fathers even though their fathers understood nothing? And the word law in this verse is shartiyya. It is conditional. It's like an if sentence. The verb of the condition is the verb of the condition, or what we call in Arabic fi'l al-shart, is kana, were, and jawab al-shart, the answer of the conditional sentence, is umirid, it's mahdhuf, according to what is popular among the grammarians. And the second opinion is that it is umirid and does not require a taqdir, an estimated answer to the condition, right? And this is what they say, it doesn't require it. وجواب الشرط محذوف على المشهور أو لا يحتاج على القول الثاني. أيتبعون آباءهم ولو كان آباءهم في هذه الحال التي لا يستحقون أن يتبعوا. Do they follow their fathers even though their fathers in such a condition are not worthy of being followed? لا يعقلون شيئا. لا يعقلونه المراد بالعقل هنا عقل التصرف لا عقل الإدراك. لا عقل الإدراك. They don't understand anything, right? This is talking about لا يعقلون. This is in reference to the mind that knows what it is doing, not just a sane mind, a mind that is guided or will go to the truth. Because the mind is of two types. العقل عقلان، عقل تصرف وعقل إدراك. فعقل الإدراك هو مناط التكليف الذي يتكلم عليه الفقهاء ويقولون من شرط وجوب كذا وكذا يكون عاقلا. There is the mind that is able to manage things, and then there is the one which is able to perceive things on a basic level. It is sane, and this is the one, and this one is the object which is held responsible. And that is what the scholars describe when they say that a condition for an obligation of such and such is that someone is sane. That's called عقل الإدراك. أما عقل التصرف فهو محل المدح والثناء بمعنى أن يكون لدى الإنسان عقل يمنعه عما يضره. As for the mind that is able to manage things, this is the mind which is praised and revered, meaning that a person possesses a mind which stops him from what harms him. He's able to size up situations properly. So in this verse, what is referred to is عقل التصرف. عقل التصرف, the mind that is able to manage things, to manage itself, and to be guided and to find the right things. So their forefathers are smart, they are sane and can perceive matters that benefit them and harm them. They can probably perceive them, but they do not possess حسن التصرف, proper conduct or behavior. لا يعقلون شيئا أي لا يتصرفون تصرف العاقل بحيث يدركون ما ينفعهم ويضرهم فيدفعون ما ينفعهم ويدعون ما يضرهم. Their fathers did not understand anything. They do not behave in a proper way such that they realize what benefits and harms them, so they push away what benefits them and are lax with what harms them. They do the complete opposite. And the word shay'an in the verse is what we call nakira fi siyaq al-nafi, is indefinite in the context of negation, and this means that it is am, it is general. It encompasses basically everything. One might say that if it is general, then it means that they don't understand even the worldly matters. Yet they know how to deal with worldly matters. They buy and sell and seek what is better for themselves in general livelihood. The answer to this is that this is nothing compared to what has to do with matters of the hereafter. أو يقال إن المراد بهذا العموم والخصوص العموم الخصوص عفوا لأن المقام هنا مقام منهاج وعمل ليس بشيء بالنسبة لما يتعلق في أمور الآخرة. So what is intended with this generality is specificity, because the context is one of methodology or context and action. That is because the beginning of the verse is اتبعوا ما أنزل الله قالوا بل نتبع, follow what Allah has revealed. They say rather we will follow. So it has to do with what Allah has revealed. So it would mean that they don't know anything from matters to do with the hereafter. So we're talking strictly about matters of the hereafter. شيئا من أمور الآخرة. So it can be either that or it could be that the matters of the dunya are so small compared to the matters of the akhirah that the matters of the dunya are nothing. And both are actually going back to one meaning. Do we say that shay'in is general but that matters of the dunya are not included due to their insignificance? Or do we say that the matters of this world were not included to begin with because this is in the context of working for the hereafter? وَلَا يَهْتَدُونَ, nor were they guided. لَا يَعْقِلُونَ وَلَا يَهْتَدُونَ. So that's what it is. They did not understand nor were they guided. Such people are not worthy of being followed. That is why the verse began with Hamzatul Inkar. جاءت Hamzatul Inkar. The alif came in the beginning so as to ask somewhat of a rhetorical question, a repudiation so as to refute it. It says أولو, right? This is the alif in the beginning. أولو كان آباؤهم لا يعقلون شيئا ولا يهتدون. Even though their fathers understood nothing nor were they guided. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in verse 171, ومثل الذين كفروا كمثل الذي ينعق بما لا يسمع إلا دعاء ونداء صم بكم عمي فهم لا يعقلون. And the example of those who disbelieve is as that of him who shouts to the flock of sheep that hears nothing but calls and cries. That's all they understand. They are deaf, dumb, and blind, so they do not understand. So it is like a shepherd who calls to the livestock. So a human being is shouting at animals which only understand sounds, calls, and cries. The word of dua in this verse means that you are calling someone by his name, literally. Oh, so and so. As for nida, then it is calling in general, like just a general cry. Some animals, if called by name, they will come to the caller. We know this. While other animals, if they are called in general, they would come as well. Like if you whistle at them or something or clap, they'll come. Despite this, do these animals answer the one calling them individually by name or generally as a group? While these animals have understanding or are upon guidance, one may call an animal in order to slaughter it, even though the caller has a knife in his hand, but it still comes to him. It doesn't know. The disbelievers are like that because they follow their fathers, but without understanding the condition which their fathers are upon, which is that their fathers don't understand anything. Many people resemble the disbelievers in that they follow the one who calls and cries out just as animals would follow that. They don't understand, they don't think, so things like the call to nationalism, partisanship, and what resembles that are of this type. Those who are called to it don't think about its implications of causing division between the Muslims. They make the connection based on language or nationality, هذا هو الرابط يعني, but they leave off the connection which Allah has set down based on their actual religion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, for example, إنما المؤمنون إخوة, the believers are but brothers. He did not say إنما العرب إخوة, the Arabs are but brothers. So it includes all of the believers, even if they are non-Arab, and it does not include a disbeliever, even if he is an Arab. Look at what the Prophet Ibrahim ﷺ said to his father and people. وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ لِأَبِيهِ وَقَوْمِهِ إِنَّنِي بَرَاءٌ مِّمَّا تَعْبُدُونَ إِلَّا الَّذِي فَطَرَنِي فَإِنَّهُ سَيَهْدِينِ. And mention, O Muhammad, when Abraham said to his father and his people, indeed I am disassociated from that which you worship, except for he who created me, and indeed he will guide me. He also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about this, قد كانت لكم أسوة حسنة في إبراهيم والذين معه إذ قالوا لقومهم إنا براء منكم ومما تعبدون من دون الله. There has already been for you an excellent pattern in Abraham and those with him when they said to their people, Indeed, we are disassociated from you and from whatever you worship other than Allah. They said this to their own people. So this is the real connection. So the situation of some people who have drifted towards such cause of nationalism, then they're included in the verse we are discussing. Like the one, like that of one who shouts and hears nothing but calls and cries. They are like the animals who just hear calls and cries but don't understand anything. صم بكم عمي فهم لا يعقلون. Deaf, dumb, and blind, so they don't understand. The word summun is the plural of asam in Arabic, which refers to one who does not hear. Bukmun is the plural of abkam, one who does not speak, and umyun is the plural of a'ma, one who does not see. And in terms of the Arabic language, the word sum is what we call khabar mubtada mahdhuf, a predicate of an omitted subject, which is hum summun. Hum is the word that comes before that. No, they are in this case deaf. The letter ya in the word umyun has a dhamma on it, umyun, even though the letter ya normally does not have that. The same goes for the letter waw. But this only applies if the letter ya has a letter before it with a kasrah, with a sound of an e basically, such as ja al-qadi. We don't say ja al-qadiyu. We say ja al-qadi. In terms of grammar, one would say al-qadi فاعل مرفوع بضمة مقدرة على الياء منع من ظهورها الثقل. The word al-qadi, which means judge, is a doer of the action which has a dhamma at the end of it that is estimated on the letter ya, but it is not there because pronouncing the ya with a dhamma would be difficult. Qadiyu would be hard to say. So in such cases, the letter ya, if preceded by a letter with a kasra, or the letter waw, if preceded by a letter with a dhamma, then each of them would be pronounced as is without a dhamma on it, just as an elongated vowel. But if the letter before them is sakin, or we say in Arabic silent, then the dhamma or kasra would appear on it, whether on the waw or the ya at the end of the word. For example, اشتريت دلوا وهذا دلو. It means I purchased a bucket and this is a bucket. So وهذا دلو, right? Because the lam is the silent one. There is a dhamma on the letter waw in the second sentence because the letter lam before the waw is silent, it's sakin. نظرت إلى دلو, right? The kasra appears on the letter waw. It means I looked at a bucket. The kasra appears on the letter waw, dalwin, because the letter lam before it is sakin, is silent, like ghazwun and ghazwun, which means invasion. نظرت إلى عمي. I looked at blind people. The letter ya has a kasra under it. And because the letter mim before that is silent. نظرت إلى ظبي. Looked at an antelope. The same idea. The letter ba before the ya is silent. صم بكم عمي. Deaf and blind. They are deaf from hearing the truth, even though they can hear other things. However, hearing other than the truth is of no benefit to them. It is as if it is non-existent. So they hear falsehood. What does hearing do for you in that case? As for dumb, they don't speak even if they are eloquent, meaning they don't speak the truth, and their speaking of other than the truth is as if their ability to speak is non-existent. And that is because their speech is of no benefit. نطقهم بغير الحق كالعدم لعدم نفعه لا ينفع. And they are blind. They don't see, even though they may have 20/20 vision, but they don't see the truth. They don't see the signs nor those who speak about the signs. لا يبصرون الآيات ولا يبصرون ما يقول بالآيات أيضا. They don't benefit from them. فهم لا يعقلون. At the end of the verse. The letter fa is for التفريع. In the word fahum, before hum, the letter fa, fahum. This sentence branches off from what came before it. هذه الجملة مفرعة على ما قبلها. يعني فلكونهم عميا وبكما وصما هم لا يعقلون أي لا يعقلون عقل رشد وإن كان عندهم عقل إدراك لكن ما عندهم عقل رشد. Due to their being blind, deaf, dumb, and blind, they don't understand. They don't have a mind that is guided to the truth, even though they have a mind that is sane and perceives, but they don't have a mind that is guided. فلعدم انتفاعهم بعقولهم نفى الله عنهم العقل الذي هو حقيقة العقل. ولهذا سمي العقل عقلا لأنه يعقل صاحبه عما يضره. هذا يسمى عقلا ويسمى حجرا. So due to them not getting benefit from their minds, the intellect that they have, Allah has nullified from them the mind or the intellect, the reality of this aql, The real mind has been called aql because it prevents a person from what harms it. It is also called hijr, as we see in Sūrat al-Fajr. هل في ذلك قسم لذي حجر? Is there not in all that an oath sufficient for one who what? One of perception. ذي حجر يعني ذي عقل لأنه أيضا يحجر صاحبه عما يضره. It restrains one from what harms him. That's what's called hijr. And in the verse continues in Surah al-Baqarah, إلا دعاء ونداء. The word dua is مستثنى, an exception, and that is why it is a fatha at the end, إلا دعاء. This is what the word إلا does to it. احذف النفي واحذف إلا فقل يسمع دعاء ونداء. How do you know that it is meant to be an exception? One can drop the negation, which is the word ma, the word ma, and the word إلا to get يسمع دعاء ونداء. The verse actually we see it as ما يسمع إلا دعاء ونداء. So drop the ma and the إلا, it would be يسمع دعاء ونداء. He hears calls and cries. It is like ما قام إلا زيد. Take out the ma, take out the إلا, it becomes قام زيد. Nobody got up except Zayd, meaning Zayd is the one who got up. So that if you take out these two parts of the sentence, then you will know that this is talking about an exception. Going back to the benefits of the previous verses, verse 169, إنما يأمركم بالسوء والفحشاء وأن تقولوا على الله ما لا تعلمون. He only orders you to evil and immorality and to say about Allah what you do not know. The verse shows that the shaitan has a will and a command. للشيطان إرادة وأمر إرادة وأمرا. He only commands evil, he never commands good. We know that he does not command what is good due to the restriction in the verse, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالسُّوءِ وَالْفَحْشَاءِ. We call this in Arabic al-Hasr. As for the hadith of Abu Hurairah in which he taught him to keep away the shaitan by reciting Ayat al-Kursi, then this is very rare. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam described the shaitan by saying, صَدَقَكَ وَهُوَ كَذُوب. He told you the truth, though he is a liar, one who lies all the time. I add that he taught him this because he did not want to be taken to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so he did it to save himself. So this can happen. And the verse shows that if one intends to do major or minor sins, then this is from the commands of the shaitan, and so one must be aware of that. That is because we do not have an obvious sign or an indication about this. The shaitan does not stand in front of us and tells us do this or do that, or does he force us to do it. But when what we are intending to do is from as-su' al-fahsha, then we know that it is from the commands of the shaitan. And the verse also shows that the speaking about Allah without knowledge is from the commands of the shaitan. The verse also shows that it is prohibited to issue a fatwa without knowledge, and وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. A mufti is one who speaks about Allah and explains the sharia. And the verse shows the misguidance of the people of ta'wil regarding his names and attributes. They have spoken about Allah without knowledge from two fronts. They negated what is true by saying that Allah did not intend such and such. So they negated the apparent meaning, and then they affirmed what is false. They affirmed what goes against ظاهر الكلام, or the apparent meaning of the speech or the words. In today's terms, Ahlul Ta'wil is in reference to such people, even though in reality they are Ahlul Tahrif, the people of distortion. الذين يحرفون الكلمة عن مواضعه, those who distort words from their proper usages. And you have أهل التأويل وأهل الأخذ بالظاهر, the adherents of ta'wil and the adherents of those who take the apparent. While it is true that ta'wil means tafsir in Arabic, but according to those who came later, it is in reference to those who explain away the apparent meanings, and this is what that term has been used for later on. And when they say Ahl al-Ta'wil, do not think that they mean Ahl al-Tafsir, the people of Tafsir, unless you're looking at the works of earlier scholars like Ibn Jarir al-Tabari and others. But if you're talking about later scholars, Ta'wil means those who distort the meanings. أما المتأخرين إذا سمعت أهل التأويل فهم الذين يؤولون آيات الصفات وأحاديثها وهو في الحقيقة التحريف. As for the later scholars, if you hear the term أهل التأويل, then they are those who do ta'wil of the ayat and the hadith regarding Allah's attributes. In reality, it is distortion or tahrif. نحن لا نوافقهم على أن هذا من باب التأويل، نقول هو تحريف في الواقع لأن التأويل الذي لا دليل عليه تحريف وتغيير للمعنى عما أرض الله. We do not agree with them that this is from the aspect of ta'wil. We say that in reality it is tahrif, because ta'wil without evidence is tahrif and a changing the meaning to other than what Allah intended. إنما هذا هو المعروف عند أهل العلم أن أهل التأويل في هذا هم الذين يصفون ظواهر الكتاب والسنة فيما يتعلق بالأسماء والصفات. That is what is known among the people of knowledge, that the adherents of, or the people of ta'wil, are those who displace the apparent meanings of the Qur'an and the Sunnah regarding the names and attributes of Allah. And the verse shows the obligation of revering Allah because the verse began in general terms that one is not to obey the commands of the shaitan as he commands minor and major sins. And then after that, the verse specifies the shaitan commands the speaking about Allah without knowledge, which is the fahsha, which is the major sin. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, as you can see here, إِنَّمَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالسُّوءِ وَالْفَحْشَاءِ. That's the first part. He only orders you to evil and immorality. But then it says what? وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. The specific now, after the general, and to say about Allah what you do not know. General, then specific. One is not to speak without knowledge, especially about Allah. وإذا قيل لهم اتبعوا ما أنزل الله قالوا ما نتبع ما ألفينا عليه آباءنا أو لو كان آباؤهم لا يعقلون شيئا ولا يهتدون. This is verse 170, we're reviewing it. And when it is said to them, follow what Allah has revealed, they say rather we will follow that which we found our fathers doing, even though their fathers understood nothing, nor were they guided. In the verse is a censure of partisanship which is devoid of guidance. ذم والتعصب وغير هدى. Their fathers did not understand nor were they guided, yet they still insisted on following them. And one who shows partisanship for a madhab while going against the evidences, then such a person resembles those mentioned in the verse. من تعصب لمذهب مع مخالفة الدليل ففيه شبه من هؤلاء. When he goes against the evidences that go against his madhab. هم يقولون نتبع ما ألفينا عليه آباءنا والمتعصب لمذهبه ما وجدنا عليه مشائخنا فهذا فيه شبه منهم. Those ones say we follow that which we found our fathers doing, and those who are partisans for their school of thought would say we follow what our scholars are doing, so such a person resembles them. And the obligation is that if one is told to follow what Allah has revealed, that such a person would say we hear and obey. والواجب أن الإنسان إذا قيل له اتبع ما أنزل الله أن يقول سمعنا وأطعنا. One should only comply to what Allah has revealed. اتبعوا ما أنزل الله, Allah says, not what this one or that one said. It has to be based on what Allah said. As for submissiveness to what the scholar said, then that is not correct. It is only to what Allah has revealed, which is al-Kitab wal-Hikmah, the book and the Hikmah. And the scholars have differed regarding the statements of a companion. According to the madhab of Imam Ahmad, it is a hujjah, an evidence, as long as it does not go against the evidences, and as long as it is not contradicted by another companion's statement. If it goes against the evidences, then it is discarded without question, and the evidence is followed instead. And if it is contradicted by the statement of another companion, then one must see what is more correct, and one would see which one is closer to the book and the Sunnah, and that is the one that is taken. And regarding following the tafsir of companions such as Mujahid and Qatada, the scholars differed on this, but the Shaykh sees that he does not see that it is an obligation, and that this requires another, more examination, this kind of a claim. If it is not possible to see which one is closer to the book and the Sunnah, then we investigate as to which one is closer to being correct in terms of the knowledge in general, and the companions have differences in this. And the verse shows the stubbornness of such people. They are told to follow what Allah has revealed. They are not told follow what we were upon, but follow what Allah has revealed, but they oppose and insist on following what they found their fathers doing. And the verse shows that anyone who opposes the truth which Allah has revealed is someone without intellect and lacks guidance, because Allah says what? لا يعقلون شيئا ولا يهتدون. They understood nothing, nor were they guided. And reviewing verse 171, ومثل الذين كفروا كمثل الذي يعق بما لا يسمع إلا دعاء ونداء صم بكم عمي فهم لا يعقلون. And the example of those who disbelieve is as that of him who shouts to the flock of sheep that is nothing but calls and cries. They are deaf, dumb, and blind, so they do not understand. So such people in regards to following their forefathers are like the animals which answer the caller. They only hear a sound, a call and a cry. They don't understand something nor realize its benefits and the harm in going against something good. They have no idea. In another interpretation, the verse also shows that a seal has been put on the hearts of such people, so they do not hear what they are being called to of the truth. And a third interpretation is that it is regarding the idols, in that they will never answer them. And this is the explanation this explanation was chosen by Ibn Jarir al-Tabari, but it is weak because idols cannot hear anyway. So one cannot resemble people to them, because the verse says, بِمَا لَا يَسْمَعُ إِلَّا دُعَاءً وَنِدَاءً. He only hears calls and cries, and idols can hear even calls and cries. Now verse 172. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُلُوا مِنْ طَيِّبَاتِ مَا رَزَقْنَاكُمْ وَاشْكُرُوا لِلَّهِ إِن كُنتُمْ إِيَّاهُ تَعْبُدُونَ. O you who have believed, eat from the good things which we have provided for you, and be grateful to Allah if it is indeed Him that you worship. تَصْدِيرُ الْحُكْمِ بِالنِّدَاءِ يَدُلُّ عَلَى الْإِهْتِمَامِ بِهِ. Issuing a command, as we see in this verse, with an address shows that it is of importance. You call on somebody, oh so and so. لأن النداء يستلزم انتباه المنادى وكل من دعي إلى شيء بأداة تقتضي الانتباه فهو دليل على أهمية هذا المدعو إليه. Because an address necessitates the one who is being called, and anyone who is called to something with a tool that requires attention, then that proves and it proves that this is of importance of what is being called towards. وأيضا يا أيها الذين آمنوا النداء بوصف الإيمان له فوائد, and the address with all you who believe, this address has with the attribution of faith has many benefits. منها أن المأمور به من مقتضيات الإيمان, among them is that what is being commanded is from the requisites or essentials of faith. ومنها أن مخالفته نقص في الإيمان, and from those benefits that we get from this is that going against the command would be a deficiency of faith. ومن فوائده أيضا التصدير بالإيمان يا أيها الذين آمنوا الإغراء. Also, the address with the attribute of faith brings an incitement to obey the command and encouragement for the believers to comply. If you're a believer, then do this. It is like saying, يا أيها الكريم قد نزلت بك ضيفا. O generous one, I have come to you as a guest. So what does that do? This would indicate this person, or this would incite this person to be generous. كلوا, in this verse, كلوا, eat. This is فعل أمر. It's a command, but is it for obligation, الوجوب, or is what is meant permissibility, al-ibaha, or is it for encouragement, al-nadb? It is actually appropriate for all three. And this was shown earlier in verse 168 when we read in Sūrat al-Baqarah يا أيها الناس كلوا مما في الأرض حلالا طيبا وتتبعوا خطوات الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين. O mankind, eat from whatever is on the earth, that is lawful and good, and do not follow the footsteps of Satan. Indeed, he is to you a clear enemy. It becomes mandatory if life depended on it, in terms of eating. If by not eating one gets harmed or is likely to die, then he must eat. And the origin of matters is al-ibaha, is that it is permissible, they are permissible. And it becomes encouraged if by doing so a legislative benefit is attained, and fa'ida shar'iyya. An example is the sahur, for the one who is going to fast, eating to break one's fast when you break your fast, or eating with one's guest to keep him company, and like that. Overall, the foundation, or al-asl, is permissibility, or al-ibaha. So a single word, kulu, eat, is used for a number of meanings: permissibility, encouragement, and obligation. In Arabic, this is called استعمال المشترك في جميع معانيه, the use of a shared term in all of its meanings. And this is allowed if using the term, or this term in all of its meanings, does not bring any contradictions. كما أننا نحمل العامة بالاتفاق على جميع أفراده. So this is like taking the general, as agreed by scholars, and applying it to all of its components that branch out from it. من طيبات ما رزقناكم, from the good things which we have provided for you. Is the word min for at-tab'id, to mean some of what is on the earth? Or is it for bayan al-jins, the genre, to mean from the earth in general? It is the latter. One eats what he wishes. And tayyibat it was said that tayyib is what is halal, and it was also said it means what one enjoys, al-mustaladhu, something tasty, something you enjoy. مثل ما تقول هذا طعام طيب وهذا طعام خبيث. It is like saying this food is tasty and this food is repulsive. If tayyib means halal, then it means that rizq encompasses both halal and haram. So one who lives off of haram means, he lives off of haram means it is still referred to. He is still referred to as somebody who is marzuq, one who has been given sustenance. Whereas the rizq which is commanded is what is halal, and this is what is more correct as interpretation. And that is why as-Safarini said in his book on Aqidah, وَرِزْقُ مَا يَنْفَعُ مِنْ حَلَالٍ وَضِدِّهِ. And rizq is what benefits from halal and means, and the opposite of that, meaning haram means. And he explained that Allah is the raziq of all of the creation. Nothing in the creation is without a provider, a raziq. Everyone gets sustenance, whether it's halal or haram. And it is known that from among the creation are those whose rizq is haram. One cannot say that such a person who lives, eats, and drinks is not marzuq. Haram or halal, he's still given rizq in the different ways. So tayyibat can mean what is desired, and it can also mean what is halal. ما رزقناكم أي أعطيناكم فرزق العطاء. What we have provided for you, this means what we gave you, because rizq is from provision, being provided for, and we see this in Sūrat al-Nisa. وإذا حضر القسمة أولي القربى واليتامى والمساكين فارزقوهم منه. And when other relatives and orphans and the needy are present at the time of division, then provide for them something out of the estate. واشكروا لله. The verse says واشكروا لله, and be grateful to Allah. الشكر في اللغة الثناء, وفي الشرع القيام بطاعة المنعم. Linguistically, shukr means praise. In the Sharia, though, it means to obey the one who gave the bounty. ومنها أي من طاعة المنعم استعمال النعمة فيما خلقت له فإن هذا من شكر الله. Part of showing shukr to Allah, meaning obedience to the one who gave the bounty, is to use this bounty for the purpose for which it was created. Many have adhered to the first command, which is to enjoy the bounties, which is to eat from the good things which Allah has provided for them, but they ignored the second one, which is to be grateful to Allah for that. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Sūrat Saba, وَقَلِيلٌ مِنْ عِبَادِيَ الشَّكُورِ, and few of my servants are grateful. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this verse that we're discussing, إِن كُنتُمْ إِيَّاهُ تَعْبُدُونَ, if it is indeed Him that you worship. And the word in here is shartiyya, it is a conditional, in a conditional sentence, and إِيَّاهُ is brought forward, it is brought forward as the affected subject, مفعول مقدم, and the word تعبدون, instead of تعبدون إياه, so it is like إياك نعبد in Surah al-Fatihah. So in this case here, إياه is brought forward. As for the answer to the conditional sentence, then the answer to it is جواب الشرط. It is جواب الشرط, is not required in this case because of what comes before it, because the verse says already washkuru lillahi before that, so we know what the point of the last part is, and that is what is correct. It is also said that it is estimated to be, if you indeed worship Him, then thank Him. In kuntum iyyahu ta'buduna fashkuru lah. Well, before this part of the verse, it says washkuru lillah anyway. And in kuntum iyyahu ta'budun, if it is indeed Him that you worship, this means if you are sincere to Him in worship, this is what it's talking about, sincerity to Allah, al-ikhlas يعني. والعبادة هي تذلل لله عز وجل بالطاعة وذلك بفعل أوامره واجتناب نواهيه. And ibadah is to show humility to Allah with obedience, which is to fulfill His commands and to avoid His prohibitions. وهذه مأخوذة من قولهم طريق معبد مذلل لسالكهم وهو إلى الآن معروف عند الناس يقال هذا طريق معبد. It is taken from describing a pathway as mu'abbad, which means in Arabic flattened or paved for those who tread it. So it means to be truly humble to Allah. If they are truly so, then we should worship Him and be grateful to Him, and not to be like those who don't do shukr, or those who prohibit some rizq, just as like in the Jahiliyyah, those who prohibit some food and drink without evidence actually resemble the people of Jahiliyyah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, Sūrat al-Ma'idah says, مَا جَعَلَ اللَّهُ مِن بَحِيرَةٍ وَلَا سَائِبَةٍ وَلَا وَصِيلَةٍ وَلَا حَامٍ. Allah has not instituted things like bahira. Bahira is a she-camel whose milk was spared for the idols and nobody was allowed to milk it. Or a sa'iba, a she-camel let loose for free pasture for their false gods, the idols, and so on, and nothing was allowed to be carried on it. Or a wasila, a she-camel set free for idols because it has given birth to a she-camel at its first delivery and then again gives birth to a she-camel at its second delivery. Or a hamin, a stallion camel freed from work for their idols after it had finished a number of copulations assigned for it. All these animals were liberated in honor of the idols as practiced by pagan Arabs in the pre-Islamic period. So they've made up all these things, obviously, and prohibited certain things without knowledge. Another example of the people of Jahiliyyah, as we see in Sūrat al-An'am, وَقَالُوا مَا فِي بُطُونِ هَذِهِ الْأَنْعَامِ خَالِصَةٌ لِذُكُورِنَا وَمُحَرَّمٌ عَلَى أَزْوَاجِنَا وَيَكُنْ مَيْتَةً فَهُمْ فِيهِ شُرَكَاء سَيَجْزِيهِمْ وَصْفَهُمْ إِنَّهُ حَكِيمٌ عَلِيمٌ. And they say what is in the bellies of these animals is exclusively for our males and forbidden to our females. Again, they just made this up. But if it is born dead, then all of them have shares therein. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He will punish them for their description. Indeed, He is wise and knowing. So they made such claims without any evidence. And the Shaykh brought up an issue during his time, rahimahullah, regarding imported cheeses like lavashkiri, the laughing cow, and kiri, and how there were many questions regarding the permissibility. People were saying they have haram contents in them. He said that the origin in this is that it is permissible, and that he would not be surprised that some competing companies might have stirred up a rumor because these two cheese companies were being sold on the market successfully, these cheeses. He said that he called Shaykh Ibn Baz rahimahullah about it, and he did not know either, but that they would look into it. Shaykh Ibn Baz at the time was the head of the Muslim World League, Rabtat al-Alam al-Islami rahimahullah, and Shaykh Uthaymīn said that one might be better to be cautious regarding imported slaughtered meats, al-Dhaba'ih, because the origin of those is prohibition unless slaughtered properly, but not regarding cheese, which is permissible whether from a Christian, Jew, or a Magi, Majus, unless and until there is proof that it is prohibited. So we advise people to actually continue to consume the cheeses for the time being. SubhanAllah. And these commands with which the believers were commanded were also commanded for the prophets in terms of eating. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, إن الله أمر المؤمنين بما أمر به المرسلين فقال تعالى يا أيها الرسل كلوا من الطيبات واعملوا صالحا. وقال تعالى يا أيها الذين آمنوا كلوا من طيبات ما رزقناكم. The Messenger ﷺ said, verily Allah has commanded the believers to do that which He has commanded the messengers. So the Almighty has said, O you messengers, eat of the tayyibat, all kinds of halal legal foods, and perform righteous deeds. This is in Sūrat al-Mu'minun. And the Messenger ﷺ said that Allah said, O you who believe now, eat of the lawful things that we have provided you. The Messenger ﷺ brought both of these verses together. So the shukr is done with righteous deeds as shown in Sūrat al-Mu'minun, because it says, Ya ayyuha rasulu kulu min at-tayyibati wa'amalu salihah. This is how you do shukr. O messengers, eat of the good foods and work righteousness. And the verse we are discussing in Sūrat al-Baqarah, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كلوا من طيبات رزقناكم واشكروا لله إن كنتم تعبدون. O you have believed, eat from the good things which we have provided for you, which is the same as what we saw in Sūrat al-Mu'minun, and be grateful to Allah. Here it says, be grateful to Allah if it is indeed Him that you worship. And in the case of the other surah, Sūrat al-Mu'minun, it says وَعْمَلُوا صَالِحًا. So you could see that being grateful is to do عمل صالح. And now we go to verse 173. إنما حرم عليكم الميتة والدم ولحم الخنزير وما أهل به لغير الله فمن اضطر غير باغ ولا عاد فلا إثم عليه إن الله غفور رحيم. He has only forbidden to you dead animals, blood, the flesh of swine, and that which has been dedicated to other than Allah. But whoever is forced by necessity, neither desiring it nor transgressing its limit, there is no sin upon him. Indeed, Allah is forgiving and merciful. And then the word innama in the beginning of the verse is for al-hasr, restriction, and it is to affirm the ruling for what is mentioned and excluding the ruling from other than it. So innama harrama alaykum al-mayta means ma harrama alaykum illa al-mayta. And at-tahrim means al-mana', prohibition or prevention. Mana harrama alaykum ay mana'akum. The prohibition is consumption, and the evidence that it has to do with al-akl, or basically consuming for food, nourishment, are the verses that preceded it, or is the verse that preceded it, which is Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu kulu min tayyibati ma razaqnakum. Kulu, eat, right? All you believe, eat from the good things. So Allah told us to eat, and then He gave us the exceptions. Al-mayta means ma mata hatfa anfihi, what died on its own from disease due to falling from a high place, for example. So it died without any action from us, بغير فعل منا. But according to the Sharia, al-maytatu ma mata بغير ذكاة شرعية. Dead animals are the ones which were not slaughtered according to the ways of the Sharia. Usually the definitions of words in the Sharia are more specific than their linguistic meaning, which is more broad. But in this particular case, among rare cases, the Sharia definition of al-mayta is more broad than the linguistic meaning. فهنا الميتة شرعا ما مات بغير ذكاة شرعية فيشمل ما مات حتف أنفه يسمى ميتة. So here dead animals means whatever died without being slaughtered according to the Sharia, and this includes what died on its own without any interference from us to slaughter it. ما ذكي ولم يظهر الدم يسمى ميتة. What is slaughtered but the blood did not come out of it is referred to as ميتة. So I'm guessing the Shaykh is speaking about not doing the slaughtering properly. ما ذكي ولم يسمى عليه اسم الله. What is slaughtered but without the mentioning of the name of Allah on it is ميتة. ما ذكاه غير يهودي ونصراني ومسلم. Whatever is slaughtered by other than a Jew, Christian, or Muslim, it is mayta. And al-mayta, the word, the part of it, alif lam in the beginning, which in Arabic means the, is used for generality. So if one puts the word kul instead of alif lam al, then it is correct. So it's like saying innama harram alaykum kulla mayta. Is this verse general? No. The text in the Sharia have specified the verse in terms of the mayta. Just like in the hadith of Ibn Umar, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, حلت لنا ميتتان ودمان. الميتتان الحوت والجراد. Two types of animals which have died are natural death, and two types of blood have been made allowable to us. The two which die natural death being the fish and the locust. Two exceptions, locusts and all creatures in the sea. And the proof of this exception is Allah's statement in the Qur'an, Sūrat al-Ma'idah, أحل لكم صيد البحر وطعامه متاعا لكم وللسيارة. Lawful to you is game from the sea, and is food as provision for you and the travelers. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma explained Sayd al-Bahri in this verse, which is the game of the sea. ما أخذ حيا وطعامه ما أخذ ميتا. Game from the sea is what is taken alive, meaning you catch it while it's alive, and its food is what is taken as dead. So this is from the Qur'an itself, and the evidence from the Sunnah is the hadith that we just mentioned. The dead among humans is not allowed for consumption, but from the aspect of impurity, najasa, it is obviously not in the category of mayta to begin with, so you can't even put that into that category. Is the prohibition of dead animals inclusive of everything? For example, the hair, the skin, and so on. The context in the verse is regarding consuming the animal for food. The Messenger ﷺ in a hadith said, "Innama haruma akluha." Only to eat its meat is illegal. It's talking about dead animals. So it is permissible to benefit from the dead animal and other than food. As for the skin, then if it is tanned, making animal skin into leather by treating it with tannin, for example, then it becomes pure according to the correct opinion, as the Shaykh mentioned. It would be the same as the skin of something that is not maita. It would be pure anyway, I mean, if you slaughtered it properly. So if one makes vessels from the skin, one can drink water from it and store honey in it and milk and so on. One can use it to make ropes and other things. The fat can also be used as fuel. And the Shaykh said there's a statement of the Messenger ﷺ when he said, "Inna Allah wa Rasulahu harrama bay'a al-khamri wal-maytati wal-khanzir wal-asnam. فقيل يا رسول الله أرأيت شحوم الميتة فإنه تطلى بها السفن ويدهن بها الجلود ويستصبح بها الناس ويستصبح بها الناس فقال لا هو حرام." Allah and His Messenger have forbidden the sale of intoxicants, khamr, dead animals, swine, and idols. He ﷺ was asked, "O Allah's Messenger, what about the fat of a dead animal? For it is used for greasing ships, greasing the hides of animals, and making oil for lamps." He replied, "No, it is unlawful." So the Shaykh answered that this is in the realm of trading in it, meaning buying and selling. And what is prohibited is eating it, because in the other hadith it says, "Innama haruma akluha," only to eat its meat is illegal. And in this scenario, it is not used as food, but as lotion, lubricant, and fuel. So the hadith obviously are taken in the context of each other in this case. وَالدَّمْ, the verse says, وَالدَّمْ, and blood, وَحَرَّمَ عَلَيْكُمُ الدَّمْ يعني, and prohibited for you is blood, and this includes human blood as well, not just animals, because it's general. And this word blood here is unrestricted, but it has been restricted by another verse. We have in Sūrat al-An'am, إِلَّا أَن يَكُونَ مَيْتَةً أَوْ دَمًا مَسْفُوحًا, unless it be a dead animal or blood spilled out or spilled forth. فالمراد الدم المسفوح الذي يخرج من الميتة الذي يخرج من البهيمة قبل خروج روحها. What is meant is blood that spills out from the animal before its soul exits its body, before it passes away. But what comes out after the soul leaves the body, then that is not prohibited, of course. If it was slaughtered according to the Sharia, that's of course if it was slaughtered according to the Sharia, that's the condition. Then whatever comes out of it after the soul leaves the body is fine. Whatever blood remains in the slaughtered animal after its soul exits its body is pure and halal. That is so even if it runs on the ground, I mean, if it comes out or whatever. And so the blood that is in the heart is permissible, and whatever remains in the veins. So when you're getting out a steak or whatever, you see the redness in it. Well, this is طاهر. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.